Okay, this is a PowerPoint presentation I did in an economics class last semester. This is specifically, it's talking about money, and it begins with what is money? Well, generally speaking, money is anything that is generally accepted as a means of payment. Of course, we're familiar with the US dollar. That's what we carry around in our wallets. We have the green paper money, dollars and $5, $10, $20, etc. We have coinage. But of course, there's other currency that we're not familiar with, perhaps the Mexican peso and the Japanese yen, etc. Different countries have their own generally accepted means of payment. In prison, and I'm not familiar with prison, but in movies and television, cigarettes seem to be a good medium of exchange because dollars really don't have much value if you're in prison, but a cigarette, a lot of people unfortunately are addicted to cigarettes, and that seems to be an important part of prison life, at least on television and movies. So cigarettes become a medium of exchange in prison. And economists love to talk about there is a small Pacific island called Yap, which in the past, I don't think they do it anymore, but this stone wheel you see in the picture on the right side of the screen, and you can see the website I pulled that picture from is listed in red there. It's kind of hard to read, but it is there. But there's this stone wheel that's, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 feet in diameter. Doesn't seem like it would be very practical, but it was used as money at one time on this island. Seems like a difficult medium of exchange, but somehow their culture developed these stone wheels to use as currency. But civilizations in general have found money to be a necessity. Throughout history, for a civilization to develop and thrive, it has needed to have some sort of money as a foundation. And of course, money can be used for good as well as evil. Money is the root of all evil, right? No, of course not. The love of money is the root of all evil. Money itself is not evil. And of course, money makes life a lot easier. But be careful about your love of money. Don't become obsessed with it. And that, of course, comes from 1 Timothy 6:10. And the market. We talked about the market, I don't know, in the first or second chapter, I think. But the market is just a place that people go to buy and sell items. If you have something to sell, you go to a market. If you have something you want to buy, you go to the related market to go and purchase it. But the market is only possible because of money. So the three functions of money. What are the three functions of money? Well, economists state that it can be used as a medium of exchange. That would be the first function. You want to have a hamburger for dinner, and you have a pocket full of money. You can go to McDonald's and exchange that money for a hamburger. And of course, money is used to provide a measure of value. How much is that hamburger worth? Maybe $2 or $3, maybe more than that if you go, depending on where you're going. And then, you can express the relative value of something as being worth $10,000 or being worth $100, and we all understand what that means. And it provides a store of value. That means you can save your money for a rainy day. You can save it for retirement. You can keep your money. You can have a stack of $50 bills that are, maybe worth, depending on the size of the stack, several thousand or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that is a store of value that can be used in the future. So let's talk about these in specifics as a medium of exchange. Well, what exactly does the medium of exchange mean? Well, a medium just means it's a means or an agent of exchange. That means you're trading your dollar bills for some product. You can exchange. It makes it easier to exchange without the need for barter. Of course, barter, you see that is in bold-face. That means it is something you're responsible for knowing. It may show up on a quiz or a test at some future date. So take note of this definition. It is a direct, well, I left a word out there, but it is the direct exchange of one good for another good without a standard form of money passing from hand to hand. I'll have to go back and add the exchange in there in that sentence. But barter, the exchange of one good for another. As it happens, I have a friend who is a surveyor, and at one point in his surveying career, he did, actually it was fairly recently, he exchanged a survey, the price of a survey, with the person who owns the local Domino's here in town. And I don't know exactly how many he exchanged, but say he exchanged his survey duties in exchange for a number of pizzas. I don't remember exactly how many pizzas, but let's just say it was 150 pizzas. So 150 pizzas at $8 a piece. That would come out to $1,200, which is a pretty decent price for a pretty average survey, lot survey. So he exchanged pizza, and so now he can have a pizza a week for, what is that, 3 years or something, if he got 150 pizzas. So in his mind, the value of that pizza was worth the price of the survey, and in the Domino's owner guy's mind, maybe he only has $4 invested in each pizza, so he's getting a bargain by exchanging pizza for his survey. Barter does still exist today. It's not as common because the government loves to keep track of all these exchanges we make day to day so that they can tax all these exchanges. But at any rate, barter still does go on. Of course, bartering is the swapping of one service or object for another good or service. Of course, sellers would really rather exchange for money so they can easily use that money to buy the other things that they want to buy. As it happens, my surveyor friend had use of 150 or so pizzas, so he was willing to exchange his service for a number of pizzas. But that's not really common. He wouldn't do that, exclusively do surveys for pizzas, because it would be hard for him to buy things with pizzas. But it's easy to exchange things for money. So for the most part, he does surveys for money. And measure of value, the second of the three functions of money. Well, by using a standard unit of money, we can express how much one material good or service is worth compared to some other good or service. And going back to my surveyor example, he reckoned that his survey was worth, 150 pizzas. It would be easier for him to say it's worth $1,200 and get the $1,200, and so he can use that $1,200 to pay his employees and buy other things he might want to buy. And so in general, he's going to exchange for money. Using a personal example, I looked up on KBB, Kelley Blue Book. I drive a 2012 Toyota Sequoia, and it is worth approximately $26,616 according to Kelley Blue Book. But that's significantly less than a brand new 2019 Tahoe, which is worth about twice as much as my 2012 Sequoia, about $52,000. So we know the relative value of each of those vehicles. It can also be a store of wealth. What does that mean? It means you can save your money for a rainy day. Aristotle said, money is a guarantee that we may have what we want in the future. Though we may not need things at the moment, it ensures the possibility of satisfying a new desire when it arises. That was Aristotle, a great philosopher. But of course, just saving your money for a rainy day. You can just keep it. Don't spend it all at once. It ensures your financial security in the future. Of course, we are paid, monthly or weekly or bi-monthly or however you're paid if you have a job. If you're paid, $1,000 for a paycheck, you need to ensure that $1,000 is going to last till at least the next paycheck, and hopefully have some left over to save for even further in the future for things that might go wrong in life. But it ensures financial security. And of course, part of that is saving for when we grow older, retirement. Most of us hope to eventually not have to work. Maybe some people like to work and right up till the day they die. That's just some people, but most of us want at some point to be able to stop working and just travel or do things that you want to do rather than have to go to work. And cash, money, allows us to store up value for future. It's a store of wealth, so it does not decay or get depleted. That's why traditionally money has been in the form of gold and silver, precious metals that generally don't decay. They don't rust. They don't corrode. And really, of course, nowadays we have inflation to think about. So you can't just put your money and bury your money in the backyard and expect it to be worth just as much in 10 years as it was at the time you buried it. But that's really a function of some modern governments kind of cause inflation. But that's for another lecture to talk about inflation and that sort of thing. But anyway, it's a store of wealth, meaning it doesn't decay, it doesn't get depleted just by sitting there. Characteristics of money. Well, money needs to be portable. It needs to be easy to carry around. Those large wheels in the South Pacific, can't really carry those around very easily. But somehow they found they could use those as a form of money. But in general, money is portable. You have several bills in your wallet that may be worth $3 or $4, maybe worth $100. But it's easy to carry around. You can carry around a fairly good sum of money without a lot of effort. Durability needs to be slow to wear out. Well, paper money, a dollar bill lasts about 1.5 years according to the U.S. Treasury. Of course, dollar bills are used much more than $5 bills, which are used more than $10 bills, etc. The greater the value of the bill, the less use it gets. So a dollar bill lasts about 1.5 years, $5 bill lasts about 2 years, $10 bill lasts about 3 years, and so on and so on. So that it needs to be durable. And of course, coinage, you can probably go to the store and get coins in your change that might be 40 or 50 years old. It's not uncommon to find it that old and still be in circulation. Homogeny needs to be standard and recognizable in appearance, so everybody knows what the money looks like. Makes it hard to counterfeit, that sort of thing. Of course, money from other countries looks weird to us because we don't see it all the time. It's not really homogeneous because we don't see it. Homogeny just means it looks familiar. It needs to be divisible, and of course that goes back to those stone wheels that we talked about. It's kind of hard to divide. I guess maybe they had some smaller wheels that maybe weren't worth as much. I don't know. Needs to be large and small units. Of course, $1 is worth, or $1 bills is worth a $5 bill. And of course, we have quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies to further divide our currency. Needs to be constant, consistency. Needs to be stable in value. Of course, inflation does change the value of our currency, but it's a slow change, and we've sort of learned to deal with it. Hopefully it doesn't get out of control like it did in the 70s, which most of you weren't alive for that. But in the 70s, there was double-digit inflation, and there were a lot of causes for that, the oil embargo and that sort of thing. But that's for, again, another discussion and another lecture. But money needs to be fairly constant in value. It needs to have intrinsic valuableness. Traditionally, money was gold and silver and that sort of thing. had value in and of itself, because that gold and silver was fairly rare, fairly difficult to come by. You could dig it up, but it was hard work, and you had to work hard to get that. And that work, that labor, was worth something. People wouldn't go and get gold and silver out of the ground if it wasn't worth anything. Of course, now the U.S. is on a fiat currency. There was a time when a dollar bill, when we were on the gold standard, you could get a certain amount of gold for that $1 bill. And unfortunately, because of inflation, that dollar bill was becoming worth less and less and less, but you could still get a certain volume of gold. And it was rapidly becoming apparent that you were going to be able to get more gold value than a dollar would cost. So President Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard back in the 70s, although we were really kind of off the gold standard well before that. But he officially took us off the gold standard and put us onto a fiat currency, which we have already talked about. A fiat currency just basically means money is worth something because the government says it is. It's the full faith and value of the government is a fiat currency. Okay, let's go back to bartering, like the pizza for a survey example. That was a form of bartering. Simple markets, a small community, bartering works on a small scale. So you don't really need cash if you're just working with 10 or 20 people or 50 people even, because everybody kind of knows each other, and a bartering system can work pretty well. In the Old Testament, your wealth was expressed in how much livestock you had. Of course, there was money back then, but you didn't really have to have it because, for the most part, your value was in your livestock. How many cows you had, how many camels you had, that sort of thing. In Genesis 24:35, they're talking about Abraham. And the Lord hath blessed my master greatly, and he has become great. And he hath given him flocks and herds, and manservants and maidservants and camels. So you don't need cash if you have flocks of all these animals. And water you could get from the ground. It was pretty common. So you could have your basic needs just by having all this livestock, and you could maybe trade for some of the things you don't actively have personally. But for the most part, you had everything you needed if you had large herds and flocks of animals. You didn't really need cash if you had all the livestock you need to retire. And you can barter for other things you might need. And it still exists today. Bartering is still a thing today. People are recognized for what they own. You can be considered a millionaire because of the property you own. Not necessarily herds. Maybe it's real estate type property. But bartering, not necessarily a need for cash. You just trade for everything you need. But it makes things sort of complicated. Bartering, it's difficult to determine the exact worth of something. Is a cow worth 5 sheep? Or, what is a cow worth if you don't have money? Is a milkshake worth 3 tomatoes? Or maybe you trade a pair of socks for a milkshake. How do you monetize everything? How do you determine what everything is worth? Not readily divisible in a bartering type system. So if you had your trained German Shepherd that was a drug-sniffing dog, perhaps, is that German Shepherd worth 3 sheep? And the person you're trading only has 2 sheep. So are you going to cut off a third of your German Shepherd to make that trade? No, if there's some sort of money involved, they can kick up some money to where you don't have to chop up your German Shepherd. The chopped up German Shepherd isn't really worth anything, is it? So if cash is available, you can pay for sheep in whole or the dog in whole. So you could pay, $300 for the German Shepherd. I think that German Shepherd would probably be worth more than that. But for this example, maybe a sheep is worth $100 a piece. So 2 sheep would be worth $200. So you could pay for 2/3 of that German Shepherd with your sheep. So you could do a partial trade and use cash for the difference if you only had 2 sheep. We do that all the time when we trade cars. You generally are going to buy a car that's worth more than the car you currently have. So you trade in the car plus however much money that you need to buy the car that's worth more than your car. Cash eliminates search for someone with the exact worth of what you have to trade. So just makes life easier. You don't have to, if you have a cow and you want corn, you have to find somebody who has, 5 bushels of corn maybe is worth your cow. So you have to find somebody who has 5 bushels of corn and that they want to have a cow. So that makes life difficult. That's hard to find. But you can sell your corn and use that money to purchase a cow. So bartering can make things more complicated, but it can be done on a small scale. So, and that is pretty well the lecture. The homework, you need to read pages 145 to 146. You need to answer the questions on page 147, 3 through 5, and then page 151, 1 through 5. And that is the end of the lecture on the PowerPoint about money. I hope this recorded